Hi! This instructional video is a continuation of solving quadratic functions, or quadratic equations in this case, and we're going to use a method called completing the square. Completing the square. Let me just give you a demo so you could pick up on the pattern. That might be the best way. So here's what we do. First, we're going to rewrite this equation as x squared plus 10x plus leave it blank is equal to leave it blank plus 56. Yeah, just follow and you'll see what I mean. Now, what goes here is whatever's a perfect square, and where we get that is from the b. What you do is take half of the b and you square it, and that becomes a perfect square. So in this case, the b is the 10. Take half of that, that's 5. And 5 squared is, of course, 25, and that's what you're going to put over here. And whatever you do to the left side of the equation, you're going to do it to the right side. Now, next, we're going to factor this trinomial that is in perfect square form. And the question is, what times what is x squared? Well, that's x and x. And what times what is 25? That's 5 and 5. And what must your signs be so that if you combine them becomes plus 10 in the middle? That's plus and plus. And just keep in mind, it will always be an identical binomial. Now let's evaluate what's on the right side since we moved the 25 over. 25 plus 56 is 81. Now since these two binomials are identical, we could write that as a single term, as a square. And from this point on, we could solve for x, and we could do the inverse of a square, which is square root. And do that to the other side as well. And when you square root a square of a binomial, that binomial just comes out by itself. And keep in mind, anytime you square root any number, there's two possible answers. One is plus, one is minus. And square root of 81, of course, is 9. Now we solve for x, and we subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. So one of the answers of this quadratic equation could be negative 5 plus 9, or negative 5 minus 9. So negative 5 plus 9 is, of course, 4, or negative 5 and negative 9 is negative 14. And those are your two possible solutions for number 1. Why don't you try number 2 and 3? Okay, so if you follow the same pattern, you said x squared plus 2x plus leave it blank equals leave it blank plus 3. Now what goes in here in the c? Well, you take half of the b, which is 2, and you square it. And 2 over 2 is 1 squared, which is simply 1. So you put a 1 here, and whatever you put on the left side of the equation, you put on the right side. And now you're going to factor this perfect square, perfect trinomial. X and x. 1 times 1 is 1, and if they're both positive, they will add to become 2 in the middle. And again, they're identical. And on the right side, 1 plus 3 is 4. And since these two binomials are identical, write it as a single term, single expression. And now we're going to do the inverse of a square to start solving for x by square root. And again, x plus 1, the radicand, comes out by itself, is equal to plus or minus, and square root of 4 is, of course, 2. And subtract the 1 to both sides of the equation. X can be negative 1 plus 2, or negative 1 minus 2. And so the two possible solutions are 1 or negative 3. And finally, this one. Now, this quadratic equation is in standard form. So what you need to do is move that c over to the right side of the equation by subtracting 8 to make it look like what was already done for you on numbers 1 and 2. And let's do this simultaneously. X squared plus 6x plus, now that that's gone, plus leave it blank is equal to leave it blank. And since negative 8 came over, minus the 8. Now what goes in here is half of the 6, which will become 3, squared. 3 squared, which is 9. And whatever you give to the left side of the equation, you give to the right. Now we're going to factor this trinomial, knowing that it's going to be identical binomials, x plus 3, x plus 3. And on the right side, 9 minus 8 is how nice, huh? Put it in a single expression, x plus 3 squared is equal to 1. And we're going to do this by square rooting both sides. So you get x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus 1. Subtract 3 to both sides of the equation. So x is equal to negative 3 plus 1 or negative 3 minus 1. So the two possible answers are negative 2 or negative 4. What do you think? Yeah. So now that you see the pattern, why don't you try these numbers 4, 5, and 6? Okay. Now, again, you have to move the c over, so add 13 to both sides. I'm going to go a little faster now. So x squared minus 12x, half of the 12, in this case is negative 12, but it doesn't matter. Because when you square it later on, it's going to be positive anyway. So that's negative 6 squared, so it's 36. That's why it's leave it blank, I always say. And whatever I did to the left side of the equation, you go plus 36 plus 13. Now I'm going to factor the trinomial. Identical numbers tell me that it's going to be x minus 6. Because negative 6 and negative 6 combined together become negative 12. And if you multiply negative 6 and negative 6, it's positive 36. Is equal to, evaluate the right side, 49. And holy moly, 49 is a perfect square also. So x minus 6 squared equals 49. And I'm going to square root both sides. So x minus 6 is equal to plus or minus 7. Add 6 to both sides of the equation. X is equal to 6 plus 7 or 6 minus 7. So the two possible solutions are 13 or negative 1. Now, if you were to complete the square, will it always come out to be nice answers like this? Not always. Is this the only way to solve a quadratic function? No, of course not. This is one of the ways, and you should know all of them. Here, half of the 6 is 3. Squared is 9. Factor, and that becomes 25 on the right side. X and x, negative 3, negative 3. Because negative times negative is positive 9, and negative 3 combined becomes negative 6. I recommend you don't skip any steps. You might make a careless mistake that you cannot see. So always show the steps as much as possible. So when you add the 3 on this case, so x is equal to 3 plus 5 or 3 minus 5. The two possible solutions are 8 or negative 2. And finally this one, plus 39, yeah. So x squared minus 10x plus, leave it blank plus 39. Half of the 10 is 5, 5 squared is 25. So if I factor, it'll be x minus 5 equals, that's going to become 64. So x minus 5 is equal to plus or minus 8. You can see that, huh? I skipped like 2 or 3 steps now. So when you add 5 to both sides, x is equal to 5 plus 8 or 5 minus 8. So the two possible solutions are 13 or negative 3. There it is. Good luck on your test.